Hey everyone, it's Amy here, and I'm here with day two of Vlogmas, and this is my non-fiction November kind of wrap-up, which also includes a couple of fiction books that snuck in there as well. I am wearing a Christmas jumper, but it's not actually because I'm feeling very Christmassy. I'm actually feeling pretty terrible. TMI, but also don't care. It's my time of the month, and I just feel cold and irritable, and I want to eat a load of stuff, and I've broken out everywhere, and yeah, just not feeling great. But I will muster on and get these two videos out. So yeah, even though I look really Christmassy and all my Christmas presents are behind me, the little Santa's there for people, yeah, not feeling 100%, but you know, reading is helping me get through this, so let's get on to the books and stop blabbering. The first book I finished in November was one actually that I'd read most of in October and just finished on the 1st of November, and that is Tomi by Junji Ito. And I've talked about Junji Ito's manga before. He's a Japanese horror manga writer or artist, and this is the third one I've read of his. I think only three of the other two are here. So you've got Uzumaki and Gyo, and he's only got 3 out in this edition, I believe. I gave Tomi, I believe, 3 stars. Yes, I did. Did I give 3 stars? No, 4 stars. 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I found it much better than Gyo. Gyo I found a little bit too slight, and I didn't find the story that engrossing. Whereas with Tomi, I thought, the character was really quite eerie. Tomi, the one who it's written about. And I found all the short stories more to my taste. I prefer loads of little short stories rather than what Uzumaki was, which was short stories which fed into a bigger narrative, and I found that narrative get really boring really quickly. I also really loved the little kind of short stories that Junji Ito put in the back. So there's a couple of them that are really quite famous, and one that's really stuck with me in quite an eerie way. So yeah, really enjoyed this, and it's quick but really, really thought-provoking and enjoyable read. So if you can ever get your hands on a Junji Ito, please do. They are beautiful books to hold, own, and dive into. So there is that one. Then I get onto my non-fiction books, and I only read 4 non-fiction books this month. I know I gave myself the tasks of trying to read like 8, and it's one of those things like when you put together a TBR, you're like, oh my god, I'm going to read all these books, and then you realise as you get into it that actually non-fiction takes a little bit long to read, and actually it takes about a week for each book, and I did pick like a 500-page book on the Holocaust, so that's never going to happen. I did enjoy myself though. The first book I picked up and sped through was Your Life in My Hands, a junior doctor story by Rachel Clark. So I didn't know about Rachel Clark before this, and I didn't realise how involved she was with the junior doctor strikes. I think it was in 2016. She was really quite vocal, and this book is about the NHS and its crisis at the moment with underfunding, understaffing, and her role in that as a junior doctor and as an activist as well. So it was less about the medical side. There were a lot of lovely stories and a lot of information and tidbits, but it was a lot more about what this NHS is like today and its political and economical kind of situation, and about what's going on and what these exterior forces are having, what effect they're having on the NHS. And then the eerie thing, and the thing that really made me angry is that this was written before the effects of Brexit have really started hitting. So lately there's been a lot of articles published, I think it was on The Guardian or The Independent, where some figures were shown that the amount of European workers and immigrants or migrants, has drastically fallen, and the amount of European nurses in the NHS has drastically fallen. And this describes a shit show without that. And I just don't understand like how people think it's okay, and how it's okay to keep underfunding the NHS, because we had the the bloody economic budget review like 2 weeks ago, which I watched at work. And sorry I'm cursing so much, but it makes me so angry to have to watch it, and to him to be like, oh, we really care about the NHS, and Jeremy Hunt, whose last name rhymes with a word that he's more suited to, was there like nodding and pretending that he really loves the NHS, and then they go, oh yeah, we're going to fund it a bit more, and the funding is stretched over 3 years and isn't enough. And I know there are other problems with the NHS, like it's not run the most economically, there are some problems with it, but seriously, this country is just... I love the NHS. This book reminded me how much I love the NHS, and it also reminds me how much we need to fight to keep it alive. So if that is anything you're interested in, and if you want to get angry and you want to get passionate about the NHS and, you know, social services and caring for your fellow man or woman or person, please pick this up. It was fantastic, and I'm going to read more stuff about it. So yeah, that one. The next book, oh, and I gave that 5 stars. If you didn't get from that I was going to give that 5 stars, I definitely gave it 5 stars. The next book I read, which is the chunk that I thought I could read really quickly and didn't, that's The Holocaust, A New History by Lawrence Rees. This was really good. I remember saying when I put this on my TBR that I don't know how effective it can be to fit in the whole of the Holocaust into, I think it was just under 400 pages, because it's a lot of notes at the back. It bloody well did it. It looks at more in the sense of how such a thing and such a disaster and such a, you know, shocking thing can happen. It looks into what role Hitler had in it, what role his, you know, the SS had in it, and all his kind of staff around him. How did it come about? How was it enacted? And all the different forces that led to the Holocaust. It was less about what was going on in the camps. It was less about small events. It was less about the Einsatzgruppen, which I read about, and the police battalions, which I read about in a previous book, which I would recommend, which was No Ordinary Men. Was it No Ordinary Men or just Ordinary Men? I don't know. It's one... Oh my god, my Christmas presents are out of control. Ordinary Men by Christmas. Oh my god. Ordinary Men by Christopher Browning. So I would read that if you want a more focused view on a small part of the Holocaust. But for an overview and for something that really goes into like the top level understanding of why and how it happened, this is fantastic. Little bit kind of academic-y, a little bit highbrow at times, which made it a lot slower to get through. But I really enjoyed this, and I gave it 4 stars. It was really quite good. The next book I read was one that was due to me having read the Holocaust and wanting to read a little bit more about that kind of period in history, and it is Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl. Now, it's taken me this long to get around to reading this book, or diary, and obviously you know what happens, you know the context around it, and it's more about reading about the day-to-day lives and the mentality of these people in the annex in the Netherlands. I gave this 3 stars, and it's nothing upon what it portrays and what it stands for. I think this is a wonderful, wonderful extract that we've been able to get a hold of and to cherish as a, you know, a human race. I think it's something that spans a lot of people and a lot of cultures, and I think it's wonderful that we have that. I think as a reading material, it is somewhat boring is the wrong word. Humdrum maybe, and that's for obviously good reasons. They spend all their days in this like one room, sometimes going downstairs to do a couple of bits now and again, but it was the same kind of story over and over again. Anne Frank can bloody well write, like she's 13, 14 and she can write, like she's very good, but to read 300 pages of her getting annoyed at her mum and fancying Peter does get a little bit tiring towards the end, and it took away from the enjoyment. But in terms of what it stands for, 5 out of 5 stars. In terms of reading enjoyment, 3 out of 5 stars. I would definitely push everyone to read it just to understand it, but it wasn't the easiest thing to read. The last thing I read for non-fiction November was The Ethical Carnival, My Year Killing to Eat by Louise Gray. Now, I remember saying that I was putting this off until I was strong enough to read it, because I knew this book was going to challenge me, and I knew it was coming from a standpoint that I necessarily don't agree with. As I've said before, I'm a vegan. I chose this lifestyle to try and, you know, be as far away from the killing and the harming of animals as possible. And my route into it was through environmental causes and the environmental effects of raising meat and animals to eat. But at first I was really put off by this book. The first couple of chapters are about hunting and I was like, oh my god. And then it just completely turns. Like, she really thoughtfully and intellectually engages with what she is investigating. She goes through each animal and each meat and looks into how they're treated, looks into, you know, anywhere from free range to battery hens to halal meat to hunting to sustainable wildlife to fish and farming of fish. And at the end she comes to a really, really interesting point when she looks back on her year and she does discuss the environmental damages of the meat industry, and she does interact with the vegan lifestyle a lot more level-headed, in a level-headed fashion, because earlier on she's quite cutting about it. And she does look into some alternatives like the vegan lifestyle, like eating insects. And I think, really, although I don't agree with her, I think I agree with this way of eating and consuming meat, if I was going to. I'm definitely one of those where you do you. If you respect what I do, I respect what you do. And I think I would really get on with Louise. I think her thought process is really methodical and reasoned, and as long as someone can really stand by their views and I, you know, can think them through and put some research behind them, I'm really interested in what they have to say. And this pushed me, and if you're not going to get pushed, what's the bloody point? So I really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I only didn't give it 5 stars because there was some really problematic discussion around the vegan lifestyle, which I thought was a little bit too cutting, and I found some of her views to be a bit off-putting, but that's not for me to judge. She has her own views. She probably really wouldn't like mine, so that's only what it is. It just took away from my reading experience, and that's not to say it wouldn't take away from someone else's, because, you know, everyone's going to think like I do, so that's that. The last book I finished reading was one that I read on Audible, and I don't have it in physical form, so, and I'm not going to edit in because I'm awful at editing. It was 4321 by Paul Auster, and I've been reading this for like a month and a half. It's been a while. I finished it at work, actually. I read or listen to audiobooks when I'm at work because I'm one of those people that I have to contain 2 things in my head at once to concentrate. I find doing one thing really boring. So I'm able to like do my research whilst also listening to an audiobook. I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The only thing that stopped me from giving it 5 out of 5 stars was that the last kind of quarter was really boring. Like the last Archie Ferguson's bits of their lives. So the book is 4 different Archie Fergusons, and it splits off for a certain point in his childhood, and from there, so it goes all the way forward, it tells a story, and then at one point in Archie's life, it splits into 4 different Archies, and you follow each of those. So it goes in the it goes like 1.1, 1.2, 3, 4, and it goes through each layer. The last one, so the 4, 5, and all the versions of Archie then, really boring. And I read a review where it said this. It's heavily about the riots in Chicago, and kind of the assassination early on of JFK and Martin Luther King, sorry. And it kind of, Archie Ferguson believes near enough the same according to whichever Archie Ferguson it is. So when you're reading those chapters, it's a reiteration of the same things, and he feels near enough the same way. It's just his like life that kind of revolves and changes around those events, but he does react-ish the same way, but it's reiterated and repeated for each Archie. I hope I'm making sense. If you read it, or you have read it, you would probably know what I'm talking about. Definitely did enjoy it, and I think the ending was really beautiful, and the explanation of the different Archies and which one was, you know, the real Archie, as it were, which will, you know, you are on the journey towards finding throughout the whole book. I found it really beautiful, and the ending was really, really lovely. Yeah, it was just very long, and the ending was a little bit repetitive for me, so I gave it 4 stars. So yeah, that's all I've got. You know, 6 books, not bad. I read a lot of really interesting stuff, and non-fiction is something that I do enjoy taking my time over to read, so I really enjoyed this month. What I'm currently reading is The Assassin's Quest by Robin Hobb. It's one of my books for my 5-star prediction TBR, so I'm currently reading that. I'm not far through it, but I'm enjoying it nonetheless. So I will speak to you in my next video, guys, and until then, see you later.